NASCAR finally makes its return back to North Wilkesboro Speedway, and Kyle Larson is untouchable, to say the least. Let's talk about this year's All-Star race. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about NASCAR's return to North Wilkesboro for the All-Star race, and to say the least, Kyle Larson pulls off a clinic, absolutely dominates. Larson, he was in a different zip code. He was racing his own race tonight. Kyle Larson completely pulled away. I feel like we're back in 2021 when Kyle Larson did this, but Kyle Larson, once again, absolutely dominates. Cliff Daniels, Kyle Larson, the engineers over there at Rick Hendricks, found something to make this car fast and handle really well, because you could vividly see watching the race on this old worn out North Wilkesboro Speedway. This is still the same track layout, the same surface that they raced in back in the 90s, that old worn out surface that's been through plenty of winters, all torn up, slippery. You could vividly see every car in the field besides Kyle Larson slipping and sliding, hard to make the corner, trying to get down on that concrete on the apron to do anything they could to find some grip. It looked like they were trying to drift coming out of turn 4 on the front straightaway. Kyle Larson looked absolutely perfect. It looks like his car was just handling very well. It didn't look like he had a handful whatsoever. Got out to a 12-second lead there before the halfway point when NASCAR threw a caution at the halfway point of that race. Really insane almost, the amount of how good he was over everybody else. It was really incredible. Cliff Daniels, like I said, Kyle Larson, they figured something out. Kyle Larson obviously executed everything well at the end of the race to get the win. Larson actually started off at the back of the field on the first restart after the first caution, after we had a spin. That was the only caution for contact. Then obviously we had the halfway point caution. So there were 2 cautions in tonight's 200-lap race at North Wilkesboro. Kyle Larson got a pit road speeding penalty on, I think it was lap 15 when he come down pit road. They restarted the race, and he was on fire from that point on. He obviously was on fresher tires, so was able to gain track position. Maybe a little bit easier on that perspective, but still just wore everybody out over everybody else. Nobody else on the fresh 4 tires could just run through the field like Kyle Larson could. It was absolutely insane. So it's kind of disappointing. I hate that we had one guy, dominate the race, but sometimes that's just how it goes. Sometimes you're going to have cars or drivers that are just better than everybody else, and that's definitely what we got tonight in North Wilkesboro. Still thought the race was pretty good. We saw a lot of passing throughout the field. It was definitely, I'd say it was way better than Martinsville was early this year as far as the car stalling out, the dirty air, unable to pass. There's obviously still a lot of trouble with, it being so difficult to pass at the short tracks especially. I don't know entirely what would fix that, but there's definitely some work that is being put in and still needs to be put in as far as trying to increase the ability to pass at the short tracks, and we're going to see that get better year by year, I think. It's unfortunate that we've gone this far in this next-gen era with it still being really difficult to pass on the short tracks, but it has gotten a lot better from a year ago, and I think at North Wilkesboro tonight it was way better than what we saw a few weeks ago back in April at Martinsville. I really do think that, because you saw some tire strategy play out. You didn't really see that at Martinsville, and you saw some passing throughout the field the entire day for sure. You saw a lot of drivers, giving the bump and run. I thought it was a fairly good race. I really enjoyed watching the race myself. Maybe it was because it was shorter. Maybe it was because it was just North Wilkesboro under the lights in 2023. But I thought it was really impressive. Kyle Larson gets his 3rd All-Star race win. And let's just talk about Kyle Larson in the All-Star race for a minute, because if you go back to 2019, Kyle Larson won the Charlotte All-Star race. That was the last All-Star race to date that was at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. He got that win. Then in 2021, he makes his return, wins the All-Star race at Texas, and then comes out here to North Wilkesboro in 2023 to win the All-Star race. So as of now, every other year, Kyle Larson wins the All-Star race, and he's now won it at 3 different racetracks, which is also really impressive and really exciting to hear. And we'll have to see what happens in North Wilkesboro moving forward. Not sure if we can make this a points race or keep it the All-Star race. We'll have to see how that goes. But Kyle Larson has now got his 3rd All-Star race win. Definitely impressive that he's been able to pull off 3. 2 of those with Rick Hendrick, obviously. But let's talk about a few other things. We can just take a look at the top 10. Kyle Larson obviously won. Bubba Wallace was having a pretty good race. Another one of those drivers that were really fast, was coming through the field quick, passing cars. I think he passed like 13 cars on that restart. I think he had fresh tires as well, so was able to pass 13 cars, get up to second, get a little bit of track position, but just still had nothing for Kyle Larson in the 5 car. But a solid second place finish for Bubba Wallace. Bubba actually said he said at his post race interview that he needed some better louvers or something that Hendrick Motorsports was cheating with. He said that jokingly after the race. I thought that was funny. But yeah, nobody was catching Kyle Larson tonight. Bubba Wallace finishes second tonight. Once again, this is a no points race, so it's almost either win or bust, and that's essentially what happened here for everybody else on this list. Tyler Reddick obviously third. Chase Briscoe had a decent run, finishing fourth. Chase Elliott been showing better results, finishing in the 5th position. And I do want to note that this All-Star race was a bit less gimmicky than some of the other ones we've seen. I hate to say that, but the last maybe 10 years of all-star racing has been extremely gimmicky compared to this. This race wasn't very gimmicky at all. It was really just shorter, and then you had the caution at the halfway point. Ryan Blaney 6th. Obviously, Daniel Suarez, who actually led a lot of the early stages of the race, continued to fall back a little bit. Didn't quite have enough speed. I could tell that the cars behind him, for even when he was leading out front, Denny Hamlin, a few other guys were trying to get by him, and they were way faster, just trying to reserve their stuff. Don't tear up their stuff early in the race is kind of why they didn't get by him. But Daniel Suarez was nowhere the fastest car, probably not even a top 5 car, as he finished 7th tonight. You had Ty Gibbs, who actually won the open race, started dead last, able to come up, get a solid 9th place finish, and then Joey Logano battling with Ross Chastain in the end. Joey Logano comes out on top to get a top 10 finish. So if I do want to talk about a couple other things, I want to mention Kyle Busch, because I think Kyle Busch, every time we go to a short track, which obviously this is one of the shortest tracks that we go to, and I know it's just for an all-star race, but it was still a very realistic race, less gimmicky than the previous all-star races. That team has got to find some speed on these short tracks. There's no way, if we're talking about Kyle Busch trying to win a championship at RCR in that number 8 car, he's not going to win it going to Phoenix with this horrible of a short track package. Those guys are unloading slow. They're not doing good in the heat races. They're just not fast at the short tracks. They did awful at Martinsville. They did awful at Richmond. They did awful tonight at North Wilkesboro. He went 2 laps down at one point because he had to come down pit road because the car was handling so bad. That is a big problem. Like I said, there's a few problems that we're starting to see here with Kyle Busch and this RCR team. We're seeing some speed at a lot of racetracks, and we're seeing some really good driving ability from Kyle Busch in this race car. But on pit road is definitely a problem for the driver and the crew. And then obviously the short track package, got to fix that, because we got a lot of short track races, and we have some in the playoffs and some very important moments in the playoffs as well. If you want Kyle Busch to come out here and win another championship, got to fix that. I just wanted to mention that because it's just frustrating going to a short track. You almost expect Kyle to be 25th if it's a points race. Obviously 22nd tonight, I think. So just awful run by Kyle. Let's talk a little bit about the open race, because I think that was a little bit more exciting than the actual All-Star race itself. Had a little bit more action. Noah Gragson actually tore his car up, drove into the inside wall, caused a big accident there. That was the first big wreck in the All-Star Open, tore his car up. Actually, rode around in the All-Star race because of the fan vote. He was voted in off the fan vote, and obviously had to ride around at the beginning of the race with tape all over the car, tore his car up from that particular accident. And then we had a little bit later on, we have this crash here where Ty Gibbs tries to dive it in low a little bit, trying to get that position back that he lost on pit road, and Michael McDowell gets involved in an accident there. And Michael McDowell actually later on in that open race was trying to give a little bit of payback to Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs was leading the open race, got run into from the outside by Michael McDowell on the straightaway. Definitely trying to make it really tough there for Ty Gibbs. Michael McDowell got passed later on in the open, but didn't give him a whole lot of trouble there. So Michael McDowell showing his frustration with Ty Gibbs. That was just a little bit of excitement that I think was needed to talk about there. Ty Gibbs, I want to also say, he's really been impressing me, the way he handles his interviews right now, the way he's been driving on the racetrack right now. I think that was a somewhat fair, aggressive move that he made on the track. I don't think Ty Gibbs really did anything wrong there. Maybe his reputation didn't help the situation a whole lot, but you're trying to get into the All-Star race, and sometimes you have to be just a little aggressive for what you want, and he does that, especially when it's talking about for an All-Star race spot or for the win. So definitely you see Ty Gibbs there being a little aggressive, but I still think that was a fair move on Ty Gibbs' part. And not too sure why Michael McDowell was that upset that he was going to go mess around with Ty Gibbs while coming back around to lap him. That was a bit strange from Michael McDowell, but definitely still fun to watch, interesting to watch. That's really all there is to talk about after this race at North Wilkesboro, but I do want to say, before I cut this video off, that I never thought in 100 years that I would be talking about on this show a race at North Wilkesboro Speedway on Dirty Air on the show in 2023. That was never a thought that crossed my mind. I visited this track when I was really young, driving through the mountains of North Carolina. We stopped at the track. It was essentially abandoned, still had the Winston Cup signs all over the place where it had not been touched since that last race in 96, and it's really just amazing to see it be transformed into something great like we had tonight. You have to thank Dale Jr., obviously, for pushing this event to come back, pushing this racetrack to come back. I believe Marcus Smith played a big role in this, the state of North Carolina, for giving it tens of millions of dollars to rebuild this racetrack and make it a special event for us NASCAR fans and everybody in North Carolina. I'm from North Carolina, and I think it was definitely really special, and I hope we continue to race here. I've heard some talks about making this a points race, and I wouldn't entirely be against that. Once again, we still need to work on the short track package at every racetrack we go to with these next-gen cars, but I do think that the racing, especially after repave or on the old surface for that matter, would be really exciting and fun to watch in a points race. Would like to see a longer duration of a race here, maybe like 400 laps or so, maybe even a little less in a points race at this track. But I think that'd be really exciting to see. I'd be really interested in that if it was a points race as well. A lot more matters in the points races, at least for position throughout the field. So like I said, that's it. That's really all there is to talk about following tonight's race at North Wilkesboro, the All-Star race. I thought it was a pretty good race. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you went, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I heard it was a really fun experience, but that's it. And once again, about Kyle Busch being awful at the short tracks, let's get rowdy.